Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here is to take these really complex global puzzles, cut through all the noise, and break them down into the essential pieces that, give you the real context behind the headlines.
And today we're focusing on a location that, until just a few years ago, was probably seen by most as a sort of frozen, distant afterthought in global politics. Greenland.
Yeah, for most of us, Greenland was just that huge, icy expanse on the map. It felt remote, almost irrelevant to our daily lives. That is until the summer of 2019.
Right.
That's when we saw this massive, totally unexpected geopolitical shockwave. And it came from what felt like a truly bizarre announcement. We had a sitting U.S. president, Donald Trump, suggesting that the United States should try to buy Greenland.
Outright, just purchase it from Denmark.
Exactly.
It was a moment of, I think global whiplash is the right word.
Yeah.
The proposal at first glance, it seemed completely fictional.
Right, like something from the 19th century.
Yeah, exactly. A relic of empire building. Some people laughed. A lot of people were just confused. And this is the crucial part, when the news hit Copenhagen and Nuuk, they did not laugh.
No, they didn't.
The governments there reacted with extreme seriousness.
And that's the question we have to answer today. It's so much deeper than just the headline. Why did this idea, which the president called, I think the phrase was a large real estate deal,
Yeah.
why did that cause such a serious, immediate diplomatic rupture?
And beyond that, why is this specific piece of land the subject of such intense and long-standing strategic interest from all the global powers?
Yeah.
Our goal today is to go way beyond the ice and the rhetoric. We're going to treat Greenland not as just a massive island, but as an absolutely critical piece of the 21st century global puzzle. It sits at this rapidly changing crossroads of military power, scarce resources, and, of course, climate change.
We're drawing on a ton of research for this one. Everything from World War II agreements to the modern-day controversies around rare earth minerals and the really delicate balance of indigenous self-governance.
So the big question we really need to answer is, why does this place, with its tiny population and incredibly harsh climate, matter so much to major powers like the U.S., Russia, and China, all of whom are focusing their strategies very, very intensely on the Arctic right now?
To really get the modern story, that 2019 proposal, we have to look back first.
You absolutely do. The story of Greenland's strategic importance isn't new at all. It's deeply rooted in the history of great power competition.
So when you look at Greenland on a map, the scale is it's hard to even process. It is the world's largest island, covering over 2 million square kilometers.
It's massive. And its geography places it squarely in the Arctic, acting as this huge land bridge between the North American continent and Europe.
And that placement, that geography, means that even though it feels so remote to us, historically it's always been tied to the shifts in global power. Whoever controls it has a built-in strategic advantage.
Right. But before we even get to that, we have to start with the people who are there first.
The original inhabitants.
Exactly. For thousands of years, the land has been inhabited by the indigenous Inuit people. Their deep knowledge of the Arctic environment, their ability to survive there, that's the real foundation of Greenland's culture.
But political control, that's a different story.
It is. In the 18th century, Denmark established formal control, and for centuries after that, Greenland essentially functioned as a Danish colony.
And what did that mean in practical terms?
It meant all the big decisions about resources, trade, defense, they were all made in Copenhagen, thousands of miles away. The local population was effectively sidelined.
Okay, so that dynamic gets completely upended by World War II. This seems to be the moment where Greenland really cements its place as a military necessity.
This is the turning point, absolutely. In April of 1940, Nazi Germany occupies Denmark.
Right.
And this immediately leaves Greenland, which is still technically under Danish sovereignty, totally exposed and unprotected.
And the Allied powers, especially the U.S., they start getting very worried about this.
Intensely concerned. The fear in Washington was that the Nazis might try to seize Greenland.
And what would they use it for?
A couple of things. First, to set up weather monitoring stations. Those were absolutely vital for military operations in the North Atlantic, for U-boat movements, for everything.
Okay.
And second, the even bigger fear was that they could establish refueling bases or military outposts to launch attacks against North America.
So the U.S. couldn't let that happen.
No way. So in 1941, the United States and the Danish ambassador in Washington, who was operating independently of the occupied government back home, they signed a critical agreement.
And what does this agreement do?
It allows the U.S. to deploy forces and build military bases in Greenland, but strictly for defense purposes.
Ah, so this is the beginning. This is the birth of the long American military presence on the island.
It is, and it changes Greenland's geopolitical relevance forever.
So the U.S. gets its foot in the door during a global emergency. But what I find so fascinating is that even after the war ends, that strategic need doesn't just disappear.
No, it just morphs. It shifts from the anti-Nazi imperative to the Cold War imperative.
Which leads directly to the first official attempt to actually buy the territory.
That's the key historical nugget here. People think the 2019 story was new. It wasn't. Just 1 year after the war ended, in 1946, President Harry Truman makes an official offer to Denmark.
And the offer was?
The United States offered $100 million, specifically in gold, to buy Greenland outright.
$100 million in gold. In 1946. I mean, let's put that in perspective. What would that be worth today?
Adjusted for inflation, you're looking at roughly $1.5 billion today.
Wow.
It was a massive sum. And it shows you how serious the post-war strategic planners were. They recognized Greenland's permanent value.
And this wasn't just some, passing thought.
Oh, no, this was deeply rooted in the Pentagon's assessment of the new rising threat from the Soviet Union. They wanted absolute, undeniable control over that Arctic space between them and Russia.
But Denmark
refused. They said no. They asserted their sovereignty over the land and its people.
So this history, it really proves that the idea of buying Greenland didn't just pop up out of nowhere in 2019.
Not at all. It's rooted deep in that post-war strategic thinking.
Yeah.
It's this recognition that Greenland is a permanent military asset, and that doesn't change no matter who is in the White House.
Okay, so as the Cold War really heats up, Greenland becomes a central pillar for NATO's defense. But what's happening inside Greenland during all this?
Well, internally, the people of Greenland are beginning to campaign for more control over their own future. They're starting to chip away at that old colonial legacy.
And the first big step towards that is home rule.
Yes, in 1979, Greenland is granted home rule. And this was a really significant political shift. It allowed them to manage a lot of their own internal domestic matters.
So things like local elections, education, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Social policy, things they could run independently of Copenhagen.
But then there was an even bigger shift later on.
A much bigger one. In 2009, Greenland achieved self-government. And this wasn't just a name change. The Self-Government Act granted Greenland control over some really critical areas that Denmark had always held. Specifically, control over its vast subsoil resources.
So all the minerals, the oil, the gas under the ice.
All of it. And control over their own judicial system.
And that is the pivotal change, isn't it? Because if you control the subsoil resources, it means any foreign power that wants to come in and mine or drill.
They have to negotiate directly with the government in Nuuk now, not just with Copenhagen.
But there's a catch.
There's always a catch, and this is the crucial balancing act. Denmark still retains control over foreign policy, defense, and overall national security.
So there's this tension.
A constant tension. On one hand, you have this deep desire for full independence, which is backed up by their control over resources. But on the other hand, there's this practical dependency on Denmark for defense and for financial support.
And that tension is absolutely central to understanding the whole modern story.
It's everything. That dual relationship autonomy on the inside, but reliance on Denmark for defense and money is the hinge point of this whole discussion.
And it leads us directly into the modern shock, the 2019 announcement, which seemed to just ignore decades of this careful political evolution.
Exactly. We're moving now from the deep history of Cold War strategy and this slow, steady path to self-determination to the diplomatic fireworks of just a few years ago.
So fast forward to the summer of 2019. At first, this idea of a purchase, it was dismissed as a joke, right?
I think most people thought it was a rumor or just bizarre. But then reports, first in the Wall Street Journal and then confirmed by the White House itself, revealed that President Trump was indeed seriously interested.
And his administration had actually looked into the legal and political mechanics of how you would even do a deal like that.
Yes, it wasn't just a casual thought. It had reached official discussion levels inside the U.S. government. But what really shocked diplomats and leaders around the world was the framework, the language used to talk about it.
Yes, the terminology. He called it, quite simply, a large real estate deal.
And that language was incredibly inflammatory.
Why so much? I mean, what's in a phrase?
Because by framing Greenland as just property, a piece of land to be bought and sold, it completely stripped the country of its political, its societal, and its cultural context. It ignited the diplomatic powder keg.
And the reaction from Copenhagen was Immediate.
Instantaneous. Denmark's prime minister, Mette Frederiksen, was unambiguous. I mean, she was frankly insulted. She called the idea absurd and stated very clearly, very definitively, that Greenland was not for sale.
And what about the reaction from Nuuk, Greenland's capital?
That was perhaps even more profound. Greenland's leaders forcefully emphasized that Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland.
That it's their decision.
Exclusively their decision. They made the point that this is a society, a distinct culture, a political community. It is not a commodity.
And this unified refusal, coming from both Denmark and Greenland, it led to real diplomatic consequences.
It did. A huge diplomatic disaster, really. President Trump ended up canceling a planned official state visit to Denmark.
Just canceled it.
Which highlights just how seriously this proposal damaged the relationship between two long-standing core NATO allies.
So the question becomes why? Given that diplomatic cost, why risk it? What is the strategic rationale that's so powerful that it, transcends political parties and even risk alienating a key ally?
The underlying logic is that the United States views the Arctic as a fundamental, critical national security region. And this perspective is completely bipartisan. It's long-term. It's been there in every administration since the 1940s.
And when you look at Greenland on a globe, the military need becomes really starkly clear.
It's Geography 101. Greenland sits right near the shortest possible route by air or by sea between the United States and Russia.
Which makes it vital for what? Early warning systems.
Absolutely vital for early warning systems. It's a critical component of North American defense.
And the entire American military anchor in Greenland is built around this one reality. The U.S. already has a major military base there.
A very major one. Known for decades as Thule Air Base, now officially called Pituffik Space Base.
And this isn't just any old base. Its role is very specialized.
Highly specialized and, frankly, irreplaceable. Its job is missile detection and space surveillance.
So let's get into the specifics of that for a second. Pituffik is one of the northernmost military installations in the world, and it's a key part of the U.S. Ballistic Missile Early Warning System, BMUWS.
That's right. The base has these huge, powerful radar systems that are specifically designed to track objects in space. Their primary mission is to detect potential intercontinental ballistic missile launches, especially any coming over the Arctic polar route from the north.
So its role goes back to the Cold War.
To the height of the Cold War. It was designed to give NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, those crucial few minutes of warning time. And its relevance has only gotten more intense with renewed great power competition.
Greenland is also just baked into NATO's overall northern defense strategy, since Denmark is a core NATO member.
Right. The collective defense principle means that the security and the surveillance that Greenland provides is a shared responsibility for the entire alliance.
Which helps explain why the purchase idea was so controversial inside NATO.
It does. I mean, look, from a purely government security standpoint in Washington, you can understand the cold logic of a purchase. Control equals certainty.
If you own the land, you don't have to negotiate base access.
Exactly. No diplomatic uncertainties, no need to negotiate with another sovereign power about troop deployments or base maintenance.
But I have to push back on that. Wouldn't trying to buy an allied nation's territory actually create more uncertainty? I mean, given the massive diplomatic fallout, you're jeopardizing the very security cooperation you already have.
You're absolutely right. It absolutely did. They already had full access through a 1951 treaty. The purchase attempt seemed to undermine the very foundation of that shared security.
So it was a message.
It was. It signaled an impatience with that allied structure, a desire to eliminate dependencies. But it failed completely because it just bypassed the whole concept of shared responsibility. It treated an ally's territory as a simple asset.
Which brings us to the big legal question. Was buying Greenland even possible in 2019? Legally or politically?
In a word, no.
Just impossible.
Most experts agree it would have been practically impossible in the modern era. Because of that political evolution we talked about, the Home Rule in '79 and the Self-Government Act in 2009, any sale would require agreement from two different bodies.
The Danish Parliament.
Yes, because they still control foreign affairs. And crucially, the Greenlandic Parliament, the Inatsisartut.
Because they control the land's resources.
Exactly. And beyond that legal framework, you have the moral and ethical hurdle. Modern international law is rooted in the idea of sovereignty and self-determination. You need the consent of the people of Greenland.
And that consent was clearly forcefully withheld.
So while the strategic logic of securing the Arctic is clear, the method trying to buy it ignored the diplomatic and sovereign reality. But the idea wasn't just about military certainty, it was also driven by something else, something hidden under the ice that's become exponentially more valuable.
Raw materials.
Raw materials. And that takes us directly from the military necessity into the heart of the economic and environmental drivers of global competition.
So we've established that in today's world, economic competition, resource control, it's just as important as military power.
Resources are power, and Greenland is sitting on what looks like a treasure trove of them just waiting to be unlocked.
Beneath that massive ice sheet and on the exposed land, Greenland is exceptionally rich in minerals that the modern world is desperate for.
Right. For our entire technological infrastructure, and especially for the critical transition to renewable energy.
And the most prominent of these, the most strategically vital, are the rare earth elements, the REs.
Let's just clarify what these are because the name is a bit misleading.
They're not actually that rare.
Geologically, no, not always. They're a group of 17 different metallic minerals, things like neodymium, lanthanum. The problem is they are incredibly difficult and expensive to mine, to separate, and to process cleanly into something usable.
And what do we use them for?
Almost all modern high-tech components. The powerful magnets in electric vehicles, the guidance systems and precision-guided missiles,
The screen in your smartphone?
your smartphone, fiber optic cables, the big mechanisms inside wind turbines, they are the absolute backbone of both the green transition and military superiority.
And this is where the strategic vulnerability comes into play for the West.
This is it. Right now, China controls a dominant percentage. It's often cited as over 80% of the global supply of processed REEs.
So they control the choke point.
They control the choke point, and that creates a significant and frankly unacceptable dependency for the US, for Europe, for Japan.
Because if one nation has that kind of leverage, they can influence the industrial and military sectors of their rivals.
Exactly. So Greenland, with its massive, untapped deposits, suddenly looks like an immensely attractive alternative source. Developing a supply chain there would reduce that Western dependency and increase Greenland's strategic value exponentially.
But the path to actually mining this wealth it's not straightforward.
Not at all. It's filled with difficulty, environmental, logistical, and political.
And the best case study for this is the Kvanefjeld project.
Right. Kvanefjeld in the south of Greenland was a project to extract a huge deposit of rare earth minerals. But critically, it also involved mining uranium.
Which is often found with REEs.
It's often chemically bound with them,
Yeah.
so the opportunity for huge economic income was obvious, a path towards self-sufficiency. But the project created massive and sustained public opposition within Greenland.
What were the locals worried about?
They were deeply worried about the long-term environmental damage to their pristine hunting grounds and the potential health risks that come with uranium mining and processing waste.
And the political outcome was pretty decisive.
It was. It's a perfect example of self-determination in action. This debate became the central issue in the 2021 general election there.
And the party that won.
The winning party campaigned specifically on a platform of halting the Kvanefjeld project. And shortly after they got into power, the government introduced stricter environmental rules that effectively banned the mining of uranium.
Wow. So that decision says a lot.
It says that while economic opportunity is appealing, it doesn't automatically win if it clashes with cultural values, environmental priorities, or the health of the population. They chose environmental sovereignty over a quick economic game.
And it's not just minerals. There's also talk of oil and gas reserves.
There is. Potential reserves exist off the coast, but exploration in the Arctic is incredibly difficult, very expensive, and very risky.
And Greenland's government has also put the brakes on that, right?
They have. They've actively limited new oil exploration in recent years, which shows a clear policy preference for environmental preservation over fossil fuel income. It aligns with their culture and with global climate goals.
So if the big future promise is in minerals and energy, but those are so complicated, what's the actual economic backbone of the island right now?
Right now, it is firmly the fishing industry.
Okay.
The seafood sector, mostly shrimp and fish exports. That makes up the vast majority of Greenland's current export income. It provides jobs, stability, and connects them to global markets.
But that industry on its own isn't enough to fully sustain their public services, is it? not at the level of a modern Scandinavian country.
No, it isn't. And this is that constant tension that ties them back to Denmark.
The block grant.
The annual block grant. It's a necessary financial subsidy from Denmark that supports Greenland's essential public services, healthcare, education, infrastructure.
And this grant is the core of their political tension.
It's the core dilemma.
Yeah.
Greenland wants full independence, but that independence depends on achieving enough economic strength to fully replace that Danish financial support.
So it's a catch-22. To get the economic strength for independence, they need to extract their resources. But to extract those resources, they need huge foreign investment, which itself risks undermining the very sovereignty they're trying to achieve.
That is the central challenge of their political future. And that entire economic equation is now being radically changed by the biggest catalyst of all, climate change. And here's where it gets really interesting.
The rapid melting of the Greenland ice sheet is a huge global environmental risk. Rising sea levels, all of that. But for Greenland itself, it's also creating new economic possibilities that were unimaginable before.
Right. The most dramatic change is the opening of new international shipping routes.
The Northwest and Northeast passages.
Exactly. As the Arctic ice recedes year after year, these shorter routes over the top of the world are becoming navigable for longer periods.
And this shortens the transit time between Asia, Europe, and North America by a lot.
A huge amount. It reduces time, it reduces fuel costs, and Greenland geographically sits right next to these emerging routes.
Which means its value as a potential hub for ports, for servicing ships, for navigation support.
It increases exponentially.
And this combination, the resource wealth and the new geographical advantage, has obviously attracted attention from powers beyond just the U.S. and Denmark.
Aggressive attention. And here, we have to talk about China.
Right.
China has been very proactive. They've invested heavily in Arctic research and infrastructure, and they've been exploring all kinds of mining and construction opportunities in Greenland.
Which raises some serious red flags in Western capitals.
Big red flags, especially for NATO members. The concern is something called dual-use infrastructure.
Explain that.
The fear is that a purely economic investment, say building a new airport or a big data center, can easily transform into political or even military influence down the line.
So give me an example. If China finances and builds a big, modern airport runway that can handle heavy cargo planes,
then that same runway could potentially be used by China's military for logistics or for surveillance flights later on. If they build a big science station, it could double as a signals intelligence facility.
And this isn't just a theoretical threat.
No, it's concrete. We know that in recent years, several Chinese investment proposals in Greenland for big infrastructure and mining deals were blocked or heavily scrutinized by Danish and Greenlandic authorities specifically because of these security concerns.
So the economic tensions are leading directly into the bigger, high-stakes global power struggle that's now focused on the Arctic.
The Arctic is just. It's no longer a phrase and afterthought on the geopolitical map. It is the new frontier of great power competition.
And geopolitics, just as a reminder, is simply how geography affects power and politics. For centuries, the Arctic was for explorers and scientists. It was largely ignored by military strategists because it was impenetrable.
Climate change has fundamentally altered that geographical reality. And when a previously closed region opens up, for shipping, for resources, for military access, competition is inevitable. And that competition in the high north is intense.
Okay, let's break down the major players, starting with the United States.
Official U.S. defense documents consistently call the Arctic a vital national security region. The Pentagon warns again and again that more access means more competition from rivals.
And Greenland is the cornerstone of the U.S. strategy there.
Clearly. It provides that essential monitoring and strategic reach through Patufik's space base. The official U.S. response has been to increase investment in Arctic capabilities, so buying more heavy icebreakers and constantly improving the space and missile defense systems that rely on Greenland's location.
But the most active player, the one with the longest Arctic coastline, and treating it with the most urgency, that's still Russia.
Without a doubt. Russia sees the Arctic as an existential issue, both for its security and its economy.
And the scale of their militarization in the region is pretty staggering.
It is. They are reopening and expanding dozens of military bases and airfields that were dormant since the end of the Cold War. They're building new deep-water ports, and they're conducting regular, large-scale military exercises all across the high north.
And economically, Russia controls a lot of the Northern Sea route, which runs along their border.
They do. They have the world's largest fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers, which allows them to enforce their sovereignty over that route. They can even require foreign ships to use Russian piloting services to navigate it.
And this combination of military buildup and economic control,
hmm
that obviously makes NATO very nervous.
It shifts the balance of power. And again, it makes Greenland absolutely crucial as a monitoring post, not just for missiles, but for tracking the increasingly sophisticated operations of Russia's submarine fleet in the North Atlantic.
Okay, so player number 3,
China.
China. Despite having no Arctic border at all, China officially declared itself a near-Arctic state in its 2018 Arctic policy paper.
And what are their goals there?
It's a dual goal: secure resources and expand global trade. So they're pouring a lot of money into Arctic science, research stations, and infrastructure, all under the banner of the Polar Silk Road.
The Polar Silk Road. This is their network of sea routes and investments to link Asia with Europe over the Arctic. That's the idea. But as we discussed, Western governments are viewing all of this with extreme caution. They see these projects as potential strategic threats.
The dual-use problem again.
Exactly. The concern is that a Chinese research station might look academic, but it could easily be used to gather vital intelligence. For instance, detailed hydrographic data that you would need for submarine operations, or local weather data that's valuable for military aviation. Every economic project has to be viewed as a potential strategic threat.
And this is why NATO has really ramped up its focus on northern defense, especially since tensions with Russia have escalated.
Significantly, NATO already had Arctic members, the US, Canada, Denmark, Norway, Iceland. But the addition of Finland and Sweden in the last couple of years has fundamentally changed the map of the Arctic.
How so?
Their inclusion means that almost the entire Arctic region is now overseen by NATO member states. It creates this contiguous defense area right along Russia's northern flank.
Which gives NATO much better capabilities for surveillance and response in the region.
It completely alters the power dynamics. The alliance is constantly conducting these large, joint exercises focused on cold weather readiness.
And that collective security practice, it sends a message.
It signals unity. And more importantly, it provides deterrence. The idea is to prevent conflict by clearly showing your strength and readiness to defend the northern flank.
Now, there is some international law that governs the Arctic, right?
There is. The Law of the Sea Convention provides a framework for economic zones, but it doesn't fully regulate military activity or resolve the dispute over the North Pole itself.
And there's the Arctic Council.
Yes, there's a framework for cooperation, the Arctic Council, but it specifically excludes military issues.
Which is where all the tension is.
Precisely. It's why the geopolitical rivalries can just bypass it entirely. The Council includes all the Arctic nations, including Russia, and representatives from indigenous groups, and it was set up for peaceful cooperation on things like environmental protection.
But the political tensions have weakened it.
Especially since 2022. It's rendered the Council largely ineffective, which shows how these big rivalries can undermine cooperation even on shared threats like climate change.
So all of this competition leaves Greenland in this incredibly delicate position.
Profoundly delicate. Their leaders want economic development, they want greater political autonomy, but they absolutely cannot become a pawn in the great power games being played by the US, Russia, and China.
They have to be so careful about the partnerships they choose.
Extremely careful. They have to choose partners that respect their sovereignty so they don't just end up exchanging a reliance on Copenhagen for dominance by Beijing or Washington.
The 2019 proposal must have been a very harsh reminder of that.
A harsh, immediate reminder that the interest from these major powers is purely about influence and control, not about partnership.
And this brings us to the final and really the most important layer of this whole story. It's not about the ice or the missiles or the minerals.
No, it's about the people who call this land home. We have to bring this conversation back to the ethical question of sovereignty and the human cost of being caught in the middle.
Greenland is not empty land. And it's so important to keep re-emphasizing that human reality. It is home to over 56,000 people, and the vast majority of them are indigenous Inuit.
And they have their own distinct language, Kalaalleq, a rich culture, and this ancient symbiotic relationship with the land and the ocean.
Their identity is really tied to nature.
Profoundly connected. The traditions of hunting, of fishing, a fundamental respect for this harsh but life-giving environment.
And the fear that comes with outside control is the risk of losing that cultural identity.
Yes, and becoming completely dependent on foreign powers whose priorities could shift overnight, leaving the local population incredibly vulnerable.
This brings us back to the core ethical question, the thing that made the 2019 proposal so absurd. Is it ethical for a powerful country to try and buy land where a distinct society lives, just to use it for strategic advantage, without the explicit consent of the people who belong there?
The unified, strong diplomatic reactions from both Copenhagen and Nuuk really affirmed the modern world's rejection of that colonial idea.
It's a concept that just doesn't belong in 21st century international relations.
No, international law strongly enshrines the principle of self-determination,
Which is?
the fundamental inalienable right of a people to freely choose their own political status and their own future, free from foreign coercion.
And this right directly governs Greenland's future. Whether they choose to stay with Denmark but with more autonomy, or pursue full independence, that decision has to be made by Greenlanders themselves.
Free from the political or economic pressure of foreign governments that are just looking for control.
And Greenland's biggest political challenge is still that economic piece, overcoming the reliance on the Danish block grant.
Right. Their leaders have to carefully manage their choices. Option one is to maintain greater autonomy within the Danish framework.
Which gives them security through NATO and that essential financial stability. It's the safe path.
It's the known path. Option two is full independence. But that independence, as we established, depends entirely on achieving a robust enough economy to replace that huge annual Danish subsidy.
So they're walking this delicate tightrope.
A very delicate one. They have to leverage their resources, their minerals, their fish, the new shipping routes, to build that economic power. But they have to do it so cautiously, choosing partners who respect their sovereignty.
So they don't just trade one form of dependency for another.
Exactly. They can't exchange reliance on Copenhagen for dominance by Beijing or Washington.
So what does this all mean for the bigger picture? The story of Greenland really teaches us that what often looks like a fleeting, bizarre headline is actually a symptom of these massive, ongoing global shifts.
It's a story about a changing world. A world where climate change is literally redrawing geography, where strategic resources are driving global competition, and where military and economic power is shifting north to the Arctic.
The 2019 proposal was never just about land.
It was about securing influence and eliminating uncertainty in a volatile, rapidly opening strategic region. Hashtag outro.
Okay, let's quickly recap the comprehensive takeaways from this deep dive. Greenland's profound importance on the global stage. It's driven by 5 main interconnected factors. It truly is a strategic crossroads.
First, its strategic military location. It's essential for those early warning and missile defense systems that the U.S. operates at Pacific Space Base. That provides vital security for North America and for NATO.
2. The historical precedent. President Truman's 1946 offer of $100 million in gold proves that this intense strategic interest is deep-rooted. It's a post-war geopolitical necessity.
3. Its immense economic resources, primarily those rare earth minerals that we need for modern technology. That offers a critical alternative to the Chinese supply chain dependency. And then you have the potential of the new, shorter shipping routes opened by melting ice.
4. The escalating great power rivalry in the Arctic. You've got the U.S., a heavily militarized Russia controlling the Northern Sea Route, and China's economic push with its Polar Silk Road and dual-use infrastructure investments.
And 5, and this is the most important, the paramount role of its self-governing people. Their self-determination and political autonomy, gained in 2009, dictates that any future decision must come from Greenlanders themselves, which makes a foreign acquisition nearly impossible.
Let's quickly review some key vocabulary from today that will make you instantly well-informed on this topic.
First up, sovereignty. That's the supreme, independent right of a state to govern itself.
Autonomy. The power granted to a subnational entity like Greenland to make its own internal decisions, separate from the central government.
Geopolitics, the analysis of how a country's geography influences its politics and its power structure.
Dual-use infrastructure. Those facilities or assets like airfields or data centers that are developed for civilian purposes but have a clear potential for military or intelligence use.
And finally, deterrence. Preventing conflict by clearly showing military strength and readiness. That's a core tenet of NATO's strategy in the high north.
The Greenland story shows us that headlines often hide these incredibly complex realities. They balance decades of history with future environmental upheaval. It teaches us that geography still matters immensely in global competition, especially when climate change is literally redrawing the map.
But more fundamentally, it reminds us that people matter more than land.
And the final thought for you to mull over as you go about your week is this. How do established nations practically and ethically balance their own legitimate needs for strategic security with the absolute inalienable principle of self-determination for the people who just happen to be caught at the most strategic crossroads on Earth?
That is the question that defines the Arctic today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this gave you a thorough and quick understanding of why Greenland is truly the strategic center of gravity for the 21st